Hey everybody, Jeffrey here with nettuts.com for our screencast number 3. So this is exciting. I'm going to do something today that we've never done on the site, and we're going to have a tutorial on ASP.NET, and it's going to go over many of the new features in the 3.5 framework. And what we're going to do is we're going to build a simple search functionality using some update panels, using some link, so a little bit of Ajax. Should be fun. So for those of you that know nothing about ASP.NET, this might be a little too advanced for you, but I do, however, recommend that you visit ASP.NET and you can download the free IDE, Visual Web Developer. It's a fantastic program. It's free. And then also, the community is really incredible on their site. So if you go to Learn, there are literally hundreds of videos on anything you would want to learn. Also, the forum is incredible. So if you haven't taken a look at this framework, I really suggest that you do. And if for some reason you aren't, and you think it's bad, I'd like to ask you why, because it seems like we're in this state where it's cool to hate Microsoft, and that's just silly. You know, I like Apple II and I like Macs, but the ASP.NET framework really is incredible if you'll just play around with it for a while, and it doesn't get enough attention on NetTuts as it should. So I'm hoping to change that. And for those of you that do like tutorials on this subject, please leave a comment and let us know, because if nobody's reading them, we can't post them. So if you are enjoying them, let us know. So let's go ahead and get started. I'm going to have a database that we're going to search and display records on. So the first thing that I need to do is set up a database. And once again, I'm going to assume that you have a basic understanding of ASP.NET. If not, maybe down the line, I'll do an ASP.NET from scratch series. So I'm going to go ahead and add a database to my solution. You can see here, it's a blank solution. I have a blank page. All that I have is an images folder with just that loading icon that we're going to use. So I'm going to add a new item, and we will add a SQL database, and we'll just keep it database. That's fine. It's telling me that it wants to put it in an app data folder. That's fine. Okay, here's my database. I'm going to add a new table, and what I'm going to have here is we'll just do like a sample blog. So I'm going to add a few rows. First will be blog ID. As normal, you need to do that for each entry. So I'll set that to blog ID. And the data type is going to be an integer. And we will not allow nulls. And I'm going to set this as a primary key. And we're going to set identity to yes. That way it will auto increment when a new record is entered. Identity equals yes. Okay, and next I'm just going to have blog contents. And you know, this probably isn't real world. You need to add more things like blog author, maybe blog date. The only other thing I'll add is maybe blog title. And we'll set that as a varchar, maybe 300 characters. And I'm going to save it as blog. So the next step is I need to fill it with some sample data. And what I'm going to do is it's just going to be gibberish, but I'm going to add some keywords so that we can search for them. So I'll add, you know, ASP.NET, I'll add JQuery, I'll add WordPress, and some of the postings. That way when you search it, we'll be able to see exactly what comes back. So I'm going to show my table, and I'm going to right-click and click Open Show Table Data. Okay, so to get started, we'll say my blog title is Working with Link. And the blog contents will be this. We'll put it in p tags. This is the contents about working with Link. It really is incredible, and you should consider it. Okay, just total gibberish. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to pause, and I'm going to add a few more rows so you don't have to sit here and watch. Okay, so I filled it with just a few more rows of data, just a few keywords like link, ASP.NET, WordPress, JQuery. So this is fine. It's all we need to work with. So I'm going to save it. And now that we have our database created, we can begin to build our document. So I'm going to open my blank default.aspx page, and the first thing that I'm going to do is create a list view control. So I'll do ASP list view. We're going to run that at the server level, and I'll give it an ID of LV. And we're not going to assign a data source because we're going to be doing that in the code behind with link. So first, for those of you not familiar with the list view control, it's a way to have complete markup over the formatting of your data presentation. So this list view is going to be actually getting its information from that database, and it's going to be displaying it however we tell it to. But a few things are required. First, a layout template. The layout template defines the wrapping structure of our list view. So more on that in just a minute. Within it, we're going to have, for now, we'll just do an ASP placeholder. Run that equals server, and you must give the ID item placeholder. Okay, that looks good. Next, we need to assign an item template. Now, the item template is going to be the layout for each record that is pulled from that database. So for instance, in my database, I have 4 records, so there will be 4 items pulled back, okay? And this will be the formatting for each individual item. Whoops, okay, item template. And what I want to do is we'll put the title in an H1 tag, and I'm going to use the binding syntax, which is bracket, parentheses, pound, eval, and then in parentheses we're going to grab the name of that column. So in this case I called it blog title. So that's what I would put in parentheses, and then subsequently for blog contents I would do the same. So eval blog title, and that takes care of the heading tag. Next we need to have our content, so I'll put that within a div. And same thing, eval blog contents. So it's really an easy way to pull from a database, and that's it. So now we need to actually hook up the list view control to that database, and we're going to do that with the new link. And the link is basically an object model that allows for a strongly typed way of connecting to your database. So whereas you used to have to use something loosely typed where you had to maybe even embed SQL code into your documents, now you can actually use a .NET style of connecting, and I'll show you exactly what I mean. So first I'm going to add an ASP.NET folder called appcode, and now I'm going to add a new item, and we're going to add a link to SQL class. Now what this is going to do is it's going to create the objects from the database so that we can manipulate them. So we'll call this blogdb. Okay, and now all I'm going to do is from my database explorer, I'm going to drag this blog table into my solution. And that's automatically going to create the necessary objects. Okay, and that's all I need to do there. I'm going to save it. And now, why don't we go ahead and write some code in VB. Actually, you know what? Let's go ahead and create a little bit of the UI first. So first, we need to create just a simple text box for the search forum and a button. So let's do ASP text box, run that equals server, ID equals text search. And I'll just put this in paragraph tags just to have some automatic formatting. And next, I need a button, because on the button click event is where I'm going to fire that link that will retrieve the data from the database. Server ID equals button submit, and the value of it will be search. And the only other thing I'm going to do is, rather than create a label for this search box, I'm just going to put the instructions directly into the text box. So text equals search for something. And the only other thing is I'll create a heading 1 tag, and we'll call it search for something, man. Let's go ahead and run this in the browser and see what we have. Now remember, you're not going to see anything in this list view just yet, and that's because it hasn't pulled any data, so it's not going to show anything. All we're going to see is just the text box and the button and the heading tag. So view in browser. Okay, that looks just fine. That's all we needed to do. Not very pretty, but you can do that on your own. This is mainly showing you just the functionality. So what I need to do now is create something for the button click event. So I'm going to go into my default.aspx page, and we're going to go up to the events, and we'll get button submit, and the event is going to be click. And first what we need to do is when that button is clicked, we need to pull records from the database that contain the same value as was entered into that text box. So first, using link, I'm going to do dim db as new blog db data context. And this blog data context was created when we created our link to SQL class. Okay, so that created the objects for us so that we can use it. Next, we're going to actually write our query. So dim q equals from b in db.blogs. So that's just saying from, we're going to declare b, a variable d, from this blog table in our database. Where b.blog. Now look at this. It's strongly typed. This would never happen if you're actually putting SQL code. So imagine the way you can immediately save time and the error checking that's automatically done for you. So where b.blog contents, contains, and here we're going to enter the text box. So where it contains text search .text, and then we're going to trim it. And we're also going to do an or b, or b.blog title .contains text search .text .trim. So go into the database and return only the records where either the title of the entry or the contents contains what the user entered into that text box. Select B. Now, this is the same as select star. It's basically saying select all. And pull that back. Okay, that looks good. Now we need to actually bind our list view control to this data source. Now, if you remember, I named the list view LV. Let's go in and we'll do lv.dataSource equals q, and then lastly I just need to data bind it. And that's it. We have now connected our list view control to our database using link. Now link is just going to take this and turn it into SQL, into something that database can read. And let's go ahead and view this in the browser again. Let's see if it works now. So I'm going to search for link. It's going to do a full post back, which we will change in a minute. And it's pulling back a full record. Now, this isn't exactly what I want. It's pulling, essentially, if this was a long blog entry, it would pull back all of the contents. I just want to pull back, maybe, to keep it simple, a link to that entry. So instead, let's create an ASP hyperlink. ID, we'll just call it link. And the navigate URL, what we're going to do is we're going to create maybe a specific entry page for that blog. And speaking of which, let's go ahead and do that now. So add a new item, just add a web form and call it entry.aspx. Okay, and we'll work on that later. So the navigate URL is we're going to bind a little bit. So we're going to val we're going to need to grab the blog ID, and then we're going to send the user to entry.aspx and a query string of blog ID equals whatever ID the user currently selected. Okay, so I'll explain that a little bit more. What we're going to do is we're going to have a query string in the URL, and it's going to grab that query string and place it into this new URL so that when the user clicks it, it'll send them to the correct blog entry. So that's the navigate URL is the same as href. Okay, and next, the only thing I need to do is let's set a title. Text equals, and I'm going to grab this time blog title. So it's going to grab the title of the entry and set that as the text of our hyperlink. And I'll clean this up a little. Okay, so I can get rid of this h1 tag, and we can get rid of this right here. Actually, you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to save this because we're going to put this in our entry page. So all that it's going to pull back is hyperlinks. And let's close out the hyperlink and just add a break tag. So now, let's view it again. Okay, this time I'll search for jQuery. Okay, and it pulls back a link. Now this link is going to send us entry.aspx blog ID equals 4. So you might be thinking, how does it know that that blog ID is 4? And it's because of the list view control contains that blog ID. So let's just do one more search to make sure everything's working just fine. Let's do a search for maybe WordPress. Keep in mind it's doing full postback, and there's our links. So now, let's go ahead and create our entry.aspx page. And let's just quickly do this. Let's create our list view again. And I'm essentially doing the same thing as I did before, so I'm not going to talk about it too much, because this is a little beside the point of what I'm teaching today. But this same implementation could be used if you're building your own blog, so that's something to keep in mind. And I'm going to paste that information from the other page, and it has our h1 tag and our contents. Now all that we need to do for the list view control is set it up so that it only retrieves the record from the database that is equal to that query string. So to go over this again, when you click on this, it's going to pass in, it's going to link to that new entry.aspx page, but it's also going to add a query string that's equal to this individual record's ID. So then when you load up entry.aspx, it's going to pull the record from the database that contains that specific ID that was passed through the query string. Hopefully that makes a little sense. It's a little hard to explain. So in my .vb file, I'm going to create a page event and a page load event. And what we're going to say here, when the page loads, let's do dimb, the same thing again as new blogdb DataContext, and we're going to write a new query. So from b in db.blogs, where b.blogid, so where the ID of that blog is equal to the query string, is equal to, and the way we grab that query string value is request.queryString, and within the query string I'm going to enter the key, and then it'll pull back the value, so key value pairs. So where the blog ID is equal to what's ever entered in the query string, select B. And then once again, lv.dataSource equals Q, and lv.dataBind. Okay, let's see how that worked for us. I'm going to run this in the page. again. And if you're confused about anything here, I know I'm going maybe a little fast or a little slow depending on your skill level, just leave a comment and I'm happy to help you. So let's do JQuery. It's going to search. It's going to do a full postback. I'm going to click on it. It's going to send me to entry.aspx. Whoops, did I not do that? Let's check. Oops, sorry about that. You must set an ID of item placeholder. And there was your proof. And run this one more time. Okay, so it's pulling back that specific blog record. This is exactly how any kind of news system works or blog system works. So we clicked on it, it sent over this query string, and then when the page loaded, we told the list view control only bring back the blog where the ID is for. And only one entry can have that ID since we set it to a primary key and we turned the identity on. And subsequently, if I change the blog ID to 3, it's going to pull back another one, 2, another one. Okay, so we're doing quite a lot in just a very little bit of time. But one thing that I don't like is when I do this search, my page is doing a full postback. Now this doesn't make too much of a difference when my page is essentially blank, but when you have a lot going on, it's a little bit silly to do a full postback. So we're going to find a way to use something called an update panel to do a partial page postback. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to place my list view control within an update panel. And essentially what the update panel does is anything that's contained within the update panel, when triggered, only that information will refresh. So we'll give an ID of up, run @ server, and we're going to close it off after the list view control. Do a little auto formatting that I do not like. Let me clean this up just a little bit for you. Okay, and within the update panel, we're going to add a content template. You need to do this, and that's just basically saying, where does the content go? Okay, that's fine. Now, only this information, when a button is clicked, only this information will refresh. But you're not going to be able to see that too well, so what I'm going to do, oh shoot. You know what? I'm going to have to pause this. I accidentally put my update panel in the entry.aspx page. Give me just a minute to transfer that back over. Okay, I'm so sorry about that. I put my information just in the wrong page. So I fixed it, and we've added our update panel to our search page. But as I said before, it's going to be a little difficult to see the added value of doing that when we have such a simple page. So what I'm going to do is on the button click event, I'm just going to have it sleep for a second just so we can see what's happening. So we're going to do system.threading.thread.sleep, and we're going to sleep for 2 seconds. And then we're going to run this code. And one other thing I want to show you is an update progress bar. Now, basically, while the information, while the information in our update panel is posting back, we need to give the user some kind of feedback to let them know that progress is being made. So, as a result, we're going to add an update progress control. Run = server, ID equals uProgress. And I'm going to add a progress template. And within here, we can add anything. It could be text. In my case, I'm going to add an image, which is just a little loading icon that we can use. But not run @ server. Give it an alt tag of please wait. So while the update panel is refreshing, we're going to display this. As soon as it's posted back, we're going to get rid of this. I'm going to change one thing though. We're going to do display after We're going to set display after to 500 milliseconds, which is about a half a second. That way, for anything that's just an immediate post back where you have very little information, this won't even bother showing up, so you won't get that flicker. So it's going to wait a half a second and then show up. And if you remember, if we go to our code behind, we're actually going to wait a full 2 seconds before running any of this code. So let's see how that works. Run my page again. Okay, and it's telling us the control with an ID of update panel requires a script manager. So anytime you're going to implement some Ajax or any of the Ajax controls into your page, you need to have something called the script manager on your page. And I'm just going to do the shorthand. And let's run it in the page again. And that'll take care of it. And I left that off on purpose because many people forget to add that. And it's just a very simple fix. Okay, search for something, man. So we'll search for JQuery. I'm going to search for it. Oh, and this isn't going to work just yet. Now what we need to do is anytime a button within our update panel is clicked, the update panel will automatically refresh. But how do you tell it that you want a button outside of the update panel? Excuse me, I'm a little sick. How do you tell it if you want a button outside of the update panel to cause that post back? And the way you do it is you add a triggers clause. And this is just saying what is going to trigger this update panel. And it's going to be an async postback trigger. And the control ID is going to be equal to the ID of the button. So when we click this button, that's what should cause the post back. And it's as simple as that. I'm going to refresh the page, and everything should be working just fine. Search a JQuery, search. It loads our loading icon. And now it displays it. Now, you want to make sure when you're actually doing your actual search that you remove the threading. And I think I changed it to 5 by accident. So let's just run this one more time just to make sure everything's working just how we want it. Let's do a search for WordPress. Search. It's going to load for a few seconds, and then it's going to display our data. Now, just to show you that's working, a common thing that people do is we're going to add, this is a little off topic, but it's okay. We're going to add a p tag, and within it, we're just going to add a little bit of inline coding. .now. So we're going to add, this is going to display the time outside of the update panel, and we're also going to do one inside of the update panel. And this will show you that only that portion of the page is actually posting back, just to prove it to you. Okay, so this one is not formatted very well, but this is the first one, and this is the second one is within the update panel. ASP.NET. Okay, so only the second one refreshed, and the time outside of the update panel did not post back, so the time was not updated. So, pretty cool. Okay, so we did quite a bit of stuff in just a little bit of time. Explaining it took about 30 minutes or so, but doing this on your own will not take very long. So just to give a quick refresh over everything that's happening, when the page loads, let me refresh this again. When the page loads, we're going to prompt the user to search for anything. And when it does, we're going to fire a button click event when the user clicks that button. Now, when they do, we're going to have it sleep for just a few seconds to compensate for how it actually would be when it's on the web. So remove this. And then we're going to create a little bit of links. So we're going to add a new instance of the BlogDB DataContext, which was created when we added a link to SQL class, and that created the objects so that we can work with the items in our database in a strongly typed way, which is very important. Then our query is from declaring B in our blogs table that we created, only where either the blog contents or the blog ID contains what the user entered. And then we're going to just trim off any extra spaces, proceeding or preceding what they wrote. And then we're just going to pull back those records. Next, our list view control, we're going to bind it to this new data source that we created, and then we're going to actually data bind it. Okay, so we set the data source and then data bind it. So let's try that. JQuery. So we're going to have our loading icon for a few seconds while it's searching our database, which would normally realistically be much bigger. And then it pulls back our record. So we set up our record by adding an update panel, which allows only a portion of your page to refresh. And in order to let the user know that progress is in fact occurring, we created a new control called, the update progress control. And within the progress template, we just added a simple loading icon GIF. Now, to let the update panel know when it should post back, we added a triggers, and we set the control ID of the async postback trigger to whatever the ID is of the button that caused the event. So now, we click on it, and it's going to send us to that specific blog entry page with an ID of 4. And on our entry page, we set our list view control to only pull back the record where its blog ID is equal to the blog ID that was passed through in the query string, and then we displayed it. So I hope this helped you. If you're newer to ASP.NET, some of this might have been over your head, and if it is, just let us know, and I'll do my best to help you. And as I said before, if you like these kind of ASP.NET tutorials, make yourself heard. Otherwise, I can't post anymore because I can't post them if you guys aren't enjoying them. Let's try to keep the Microsoft hating to a minimum. It's a little bit needless. It's a very powerful framework. If it wasn't, sites like MySpace or Dell would not be using it, okay? So for more tips and tutorials, visit nettuts.com. We update it every single day with just about anything you could hope for. Django, Leopard, touch sites, Ruby on Rails, just about anything you want. It gets updated every day. And do me a favor and please add the video screencast to your RSS feed. And you can do that at the end of the text portion of this article. It'll give you step-by-step instructions for how to do that. Thanks a lot, everybody. Have a great day. Bye.